It appears to be foot, leg, body, head.
The surveillance footage is almost useless. Grainy, pixelated, a blur of shapes that could be anything. But in one frame, if you squint hard enough, you see it.
All right, let's get to the fun part. This is the basically frame by frame. We're going to see what we can find. We're going to see if we can find towels. We're going to see if we have white shoes. We're going to look at shadows and see if we see anything long sticking out. Part of the problem...
An elongated object.
So notice, one thing that a lot of people probably won't point out that I just noticed, because I've been, like I said, I've watched this so many times, is if you watch the shoulders and like the upper body, if you watch the upper body here, you don't see like the natural sway and like movement of the arms. It's because something's being carried, right?
Stiff, straight, not a floppy towel.
So obviously, if this was a towel, it would not be sticking straight up in the air, right? So whatever this is an elongated object. And I know some people are like, well, you can't tell if it's a gun. You sure can't, right? We have no idea what this is. But what I can tell you that it's not is a floppy towel.
Not a shadow. Something that looks like a rifle.
And then this appears to be whatever the long object is right here. So this area is whatever this, if it's a gun, if it's a bag, if it's a towel, it is out there. The other thing to remember about this is that they're claiming that the gun is wrapped in a towel. So that means that in this case, if this is the gun, then it is deployed. Like it's out, it's put together. And as far as scope and stuff goes, there's no way you can tell from this resolution. But this would be the time that the gun would be theoretically out.
Prosecutors say it's the gun that killed Charlie Kirk. But the bullet that came out of that gun tells a different story. The bullet barely exited.
You can see here, it just made it through. So it just made it through this, and now it's stuck maybe like an inch or two into this gel, which is kind of interesting. All of that energy, all of that power, in this case about 2,200 to 2,500 foot-pounds of force, went through this and stopped right in the gel right after it. So most of its energy was already gone by the time it left.
A block. It didn't even go an inch into the ballistics gel, and it came to a stop right there, really before it even made it in. I'm going to try and dig this thing out of here so we can see it. Look at that bullet, dude. There it is. The entire 30-06.
Imagine a video game where the physics are broken. You fire a 30-06 round at a target. It should punch through. It should keep going. But instead, it stops. It barely makes it through the head and gets stuck in the gel. That is the visual anchor you have to hold in your mind. A bullet that was supposed to have enough power to kill a man at 140 yards, according to prosecutors, but according to a ballistic recreation, could barely exit a ballistic dummy. Before we go deeper into what the evidence actually shows, make sure you're subscribed to Crime Nest Media, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the facts. The case is the murder of Charlie Kirk, shot dead on the 10th of September 2025 while speaking at Utah Valley University. The accused is Tyler Robinson, a 22-year-old student. The prosecution's case hinges on surveillance footage, text messages, and a timeline, but there are cracks in that case, cracks that a defense attorney could drive a truck through. Here is the moral refrain. Hold it in your mind. The bullet didn't match the story. The bullet didn't match the story. The bullet didn't match the story.
This was an important video because there's a lot of stuff going around that was very easily debunked, that I felt like I could, give my 2 cents and maybe clear some stuff up for people. There's still a lot of open questions. Like, it's pretty obvious that you can't tell who this person is. It's pretty obvious you can't tell if there's a gun. I definitely see an object. I definitely see what looks like a towel hanging off of that object in multiple frames across the entire thing. So
let's start with the footage. The prosecution showed enhanced videos
and the footage that we see from Candace, or the footage that was in court, which is technically the same footage. It's just one that is a little bit more enhanced and has like a red circles and things like that, enhancing areas and zooming in.
And zoomed in areas. But the defense objected, and the judge ruled that only the raw footage could be shown. So what the jury saw was a grainy mess. A figure on a rooftop.
A moving
blob.
blur. So even in Candace's footage and everything we've seen so far, there's a figure. The figure's doing something. We can't tell what they're doing. And we don't know if it's Tyler. We don't know if it's, Ronald McDonald. We have no idea. But it's interesting.
You can't tell if it's Tyler Robinson.
You can't tell if it's Tyler Robinson. And most people don't even see a gun. We're actually going to go into the video and we're going to go frame by frame and see if we see anything that appears to be a long, stiff object, right?
You can't
and even
tell
then,
if he has a rifle. You can barely tell he's a person. But the prosecution says the video shows a figure crawling, positioning, firing. They say there was a 7-minute window on the roof before the shot.
There was anywhere from like 5 to 7 minutes. I think 7 minutes might be closer to more accurate of time where the person was on the roof before the Candace video. So if that's the case, which it seems like it might be, then if there was assembly, if there was a change of clothes, and any of the kind of things that they're claiming, then that would be the time that this person would be able to do those things.
Time to assemble a rifle. Time to get into position. Time to change clothes. The defense says the video proves nothing. And they might be right. Then there's the bullet itself. The prosecution says it was a .30-06 soft point fired from a rifle Robinson allegedly assembled on that rooftop. But a ballistic recreation by a firearms expert tells a different story.
Now, there's something that's very obvious here. We see the .30-06 bullet come in. We see, in this case, obviously hitting a skull, which people are going to say it's not the neck, it's not the vertebrae. Sure, it's bone, it's tissue. It has the brain and other stuff, in this case, a simulated brain. And we're going to see how much damage and what happened after the fact, because there's kind of a surprise here. But I just want to point out, this is more what people would expect based on their experience with .30-06. When it hit Charlie, they would have expected this much of a chain reaction, this much kinetic energy to cause this type of damage, but to his neck and the back of his neck. Okay?
He used the exact same ammunition, the exact same rifle, fired it at a ballistic dummy at 140 yards. The same distance prosecutors say Robinson fired from. The bullet hit the dummy. It entered the head. It went through the skull. And then it stopped. It barely exited the dummy. It was stuck, half an inch into the ballistic gel behind it. The experts said, it barely even exited the head. He called it an interesting result. He said it goes against what most people think about a .30-06 round, which is that it would penetrate through an elephant, a moose,
even
an
exited
elk.
the head. I'll give you a better look at it right there. You can see how mangled that bullet is, but it did expand perfectly, and it looks like the entire thing is right there. I've got to say, that's an interesting result. It kind of goes against what a lot of people are saying about this bullet would penetrate through an elephant, a moose, elk. It's impossible to stop a .30-06 if you look at a lot of things on the internet. It barely went through a ballistic dummy head, and these are universally considered to be easier to penetrate than a real human head. And that bullet almost stopped in the head. Now, I would argue
it stopped. It lost almost all its energy inside the head. The expert noted that ballistic gel dummies are universally considered easier to penetrate than a real human head.
The actual head.
So there you go. That's his take. So he thinks in this case, this might actually indicate that there's a possibility that it could stop. Now, he's saying that this was easier to penetrate based on everything that he knows and everything he's seen and the testing he's done, easier than a human body. So that means that if it hits human bone or thicker bone like the vertebrae or a human skull, that it is more likely to stop than in this case where it barely made it through it. We're talking like an inch behind it.
This bullet almost stopped in the dummy. He argued that a neck or spinal cord is probably even thicker and tougher to get through than the thin bone around the head. So if the bullet could barely exit a dummy head, how did it cause the damage prosecutors claim? This is the ticking clock moment. What if the bullet doesn't match the wound? What if the forensic evidence contradicts the prosecution's entire narrative? And here is the rhetorical question that reframes this entire story as a thriller, not just a headline. What happens when the most damning piece of evidence is a bullet that could not have done what they said it did? The prosecution also presented casing engraving, test shots, and target groupings. But the bullet recovered from Charlie Kirk's body looks different from the ammunition used in the test.
This is what hit Charlie, they're saying. Looks very different. I don't know if that means
The test bullet expanded perfectly, remained intact, and looked smooth and uniform. The bullet that hit Charlie appears mangled, twisted, and fragmented. The expert noted the difference. He said, "I don't know if that means anything, but it's interesting." The irony is devastating. The prosecution's case is built on a grainy video, a questionable timeline, and a bullet that a firearms expert says should have done more damage than it did. The defense will argue the video is inconclusive. They will argue the bullet evidence is inconsistent. They will argue that the prosecution's narrative relies on speculation, not science. We are left with the grainy footage, the elongated object, the bullet that barely exited, the unanswered questions. The official record is all there, the testimony, the evidence. The ballistic recreation. The call to research is this: pull the public court filings from the Utah County District Court. Look for the ballistic expert reports. Watch the recreation video for yourself, not the commentary, not the headlines, the actual test. And then ask yourself the direct question: if the bullet could barely exit a dummy head, how did it cause the damage prosecutors claim it did? The answer to that question may be the key to everything. The bullet didn't match the story. If you appreciate the forensic breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for Crime Nest Media, and share this video, because sometimes the truth doesn't come from the people in power. It comes from the records they release by law, and it is our job to pay attention.